as well as gentlemen, Papa Boris is back for some more Hearthstone content, and in this video we're going to play some more games with the Freezy Pop Mage deck that we made in our last video. In the last video we played against the same rogue twice, and that rogue was playing a very, very chumpy deck that just absolutely got blown away by our control spells, and we had two very easy victories, making it into the Masters Medal ranking. Alright, so let's see if we can get up to 2-star Master here as we take the Freezy Pop Mage deck for another spin. So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock here, and we'll try to go till we make it to about maybe 20 to 30 minutes or so, see how many games we can fit into that time. And hopefully we'll see some longer games this time, so you can see, you know, the control deck in action. I've played some really, really long, drawn-out, epic, back-and-forth contests with this deck as I and my opponent vie for control, so we'll see if we can get some more of that going. Okay, well, honestly, I'm just going to keep this hand. We're up against Channing the Mage, and we have a curve here, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and these are all solid cards, so we'll just keep this. We're not going to fish for anything else. The Water Elemental is not super useful against mages, because mages don't have any weapons, so freezing my opponent doesn't really matter. However, it is a very, very sturdy creature, and it's a little bit difficult to kill. You really need to use a premier removal spell or a mixture of creatures and spells in order to bring it down. Right, we are second here, which means we have the coin. The coin is a 0-mana spell that gives us a mana crystal, usable that turn only. And we are not going to use it just yet, although I could play the Sorcerer's Apprentice now if I wanted to. I could even play the coin, Sorcerer's Apprentice, and when my spells cost 1 less, I could also play a Mirror Image. However, I'm not going to do any of that because since I have this Gadgetzan Auctioneer, I'd like to see if I can, you know, get to turn 5 without needing to use the coin. So on turn 5, I can play the Auctioneer, the coin, and the Mirror Image, and then draw 2 cards and put a 4/4 onto the board. That would be pretty sweet. So it all depends on what my opponent puts in my way in these next couple of turns. I will, of course, use the coin and Mirror Image if I need to hang on in there. Alright, my opponent is thinking. I don't know what she's thinking about. Maybe planning out her next moves. It's pretty simple. Either you play a 2-mana creature or you ping me with the ability. We see our first legendary. Now this is the dinkiest legendary in the game, the Blood Mage Stalnos. You can see the orange gem here under the GE in Blood Mage, signaling that it's a legendary card. These are very, very rare. I actually have one of these myself. So spell damage +1, we've seen that before. It means all of my opponent's spells deal an extra damage, and Death Rattle means it's an effect that triggers when the creature dies. So here, this is a spell damage creature that also draws a card from my opponent. So it looks like she was thinking about, well, do I want to play that thing knowing it'll die, or do I not? And she decided to just go ahead and play it, and I decided to just go ahead and kill it. So, really, that was just biding time until we can make it to turn 5. Alright, the Amani Berserker is a very dangerous creature in the hands of a mage, because it has Enrage +3 attack, and mages can activate this themselves. So my mage can just target this with her own hero ability and make this guy into a 5/2, which is a mite scary. So I need to think very carefully here. I could, of course, play an Acolyte of Pain. This guy could then run into my Acolyte of Pain and then take a point of damage and become enraged for the following turn, whereupon I don't really have any way to deal with it other than using Fireball, I suppose? So it's a bit of a tricky situation here. I think we'll just play it safe. I'm going to play Sorcerer's Apprentice, and I think I'm going to, just in case, go ahead and play Mirror Image here. So now the Samani Berserker needs to start running into my Mirror Images, and it can't actually get through to me. So that does mean that when the Gadgetzan Auctioneer drops on the 5th turn, I will not have a Mirror Image to play with the coin. But looks like we might just have our hands full and be playing Water Elementals for the next couple of turns here, because if my opponent has more stuff like this coming up, I'm going to have to play very, very carefully. What to do, indeed. The Sorcerer's Apprentice goes very nicely with the Gadgetzan Auctioneer, because she makes all your spells cheaper, which is pretty great, because it means you can play more of them and draw more cards. But the likelihood of the Sorcerer's Apprentice surviving for like more than a turn is pretty small. Creatures in Hearthstone have a very, very short shelf life. My opponent has her own Acolyte of Pain. Touché. Well, let's go ahead and do the following. We're going to play a Water Elemental here. I'm not really tempted by Acolyte. I've got plenty of cards, and just not enough mana to use them all. And I'm actually going to go ahead and trade my Apprentice for that Amani Berserker. So the idea here is that this Acolyte can run into my Mirror Image, but he can't take any damage, so he won't be drawing cards from my opponent just yet, and I should be able to kill it off afterwards with my Water Elemental. Barring, of course, any Fireballs or Polymorphs from my opponent. Cone of Cold. Well, my opponent's going to freeze my Water Elemental. Being all watery and icy does not make it immune to being frozen. And so now, unfortunately, I can't kill this thing off. Notice what my opponent did. She shot the Acolyte of Pain with her own hero ability to draw a card. Now, she should have done that first. You always want to draw cards first in Hearthstone, before you do anything else. I could play another Water Elemental, or I could draw some cards with the Novice Engineer and put the Acolyte of Pain on the board. I think that since it's a pretty quiet board at the moment, we're going to go ahead and take the time here to put some of our own card drawing ability onto the map, because my opponent's a bit ahead here. With this Acolyte of Pain that she pinged once and presumably will ping again, she's actually going to get 3 cards out of this guy. She's going to get to run into my Novice Engineer and draw a card, and then maybe if she wants to, she can even ping it again with her hero ability and draw another card. So this went the full distance here for my opponent, getting her 3 cards. So I'd like to catch up a little bit if I can. My opponent has a Blizzard, which is a little bit distressing. It kills my Novice Engineer and draws me a card from my own Acolyte. I don't know if I like that move by my opponent. I would have actually used the Acolyte of Pain here to run into my Novice Engineer and draw a card. I guess she wanted to kill off my Acolyte of Pain, which is also valid. Okay, that's fine. So, yeah, my thing is still frozen. Looks like my opponent is playing a very similar deck to mine, actually. She's using Arcane Missiles here, which deals 3 random damage, working down my Water Elemental. Notice how much effort my opponent's expending just to bring that thing down. Okay, so is it worth it yet to play one of my Gaddison Auctioneers? Well, I can't really cast any spells with it yet, but it is a threat that my opponent will have to deal with. However, my opponent could actually kill it pretty easily. We're coming up on 7 mana, so my opponent could have her own Flame Strikes here. This thing is nice because it does survive Flame Strike, and it would allow me actually to finish this Acolyte of Pain off with my hero ability. Now, granted, that would mean my opponent draws another card. So what I could do is I could play a Spellbreaker to silence this guy's ability, and then kill it, and then that robs my opponent of a card. I think I'll do that. I think in this, control battle here, it's worth it to spend a little bit of a resource to get my opponent to not draw a card. Now, my opponent could, of course, play Flame Strike and kill both my creatures, but if she does, that is her whole turn. She will have 6 cards left in her hand, and actually I have quite a lot. I guess I managed to do well thanks to my Novice Engineer and my own Acolyte of Pain drawing me 2 cards, so I'm doing okay here on cards, and I've got a lot of creatures here that are pretty beefy and sturdy. I feel like I have a decent chance of winning this game, although, of course, anything can happen, and we'll see how it all goes. My Auctioneers are not super great at the moment, unfortunately. I mean, other than the coin, there's not anything for them to draw cards off of, but if I can draw like a Cone of Cold, or another Mirror Image, or a Frostbolt or something, I can get some cards out of the deal. My opponent's going to Frostbolt my minion, which is a very fair play. And she looks like she's going to use her hero ability to work down this Water Elemental. Man, every one of those 6 points of damage on this health on this Water Elemental counted, huh? Okay, so my opponent played this Fairy Dragon here, and this Water Elemental's on borrowed time. It's dying next turn to the hero ability. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and trade to kill her hardier, healthier creature. And let's go ahead and now play an Auctioneer. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm putting down a really huge threat that my opponent has to deal with, or else she's going to fall pretty far behind in this game, because she has no idea what I've got for spells, and as it turns out I have quite a bit. First of all, I haven't used my coin, and second of all, I've got Fireballs, got this Pyroblast, which I can just shoot at my opponent if I want to, and I've got these Flame Strikes. So my opponent is going to spend her own Fireball to kill my creature, but that is half her mana for the turn, so I say, mission accomplished. Okay, well, let's take a look at what we can do here. We could play our other Gaddison Auctioneer, but there's really not much to do with them at the moment, so what I think I'll do is actually just play it a little bit slow. Let's play Acolyte of Pain. Well, hang on a minute. If I play the Acolyte of Pain and shoot him, that'll be 5 of my mana, leaving me with 3. That's not super great. Let's actually put some creatures on the board here. We'll get this guy down, and we'll get this guy down. So this Water Elemental holds up very nicely against the Fairy Dragon, and it even survives Flame Strikes. So it'll have 2 health to spare if my opponent uses Flame Strike here. She's going to Fireball it to kill it, so that's both of my opponent's Fireballs. Good to know. And I would guess she's going to kill my Acolyte of Pain, drawing me a card, but leaving this Fairy Dragon alive. Now, the Fairy Dragon cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers, so it's kind of a problem dealing with it. My opponent's going to buff it with a Shattered Sun Cleric. Well, that is eminently fair. Okay, well, I have a couple of options here. One is to use Flame Strike and kill her board. Then I can't do anything else, unfortunately. But I've got a lot of cards here. And, well, I could just play this Tiger, get the opportunity to get this Tiger down. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll just put some stuff under the... Well, let's think. So this game is quite complicated. Okay, I can play the Gaddison Auctioneer, Coin, and then a Tiger. Now, the advantage of that is I put 2 creatures onto the board. The disadvantage is that while I will draw a card off of the Coin, the Gaddison Auctioneer himself will promptly die. Another option would be to play the Gaddison Auctioneer and use Cone of Cold here to freeze these 2 creatures in place and draw a card like that. And then I could also work down the Shattered Sun Cleric. Another option is, while my health total is pretty good, I can actually just do this Tiger. Let's put this Tiger down, and let's just work down my opponent's Shattered Sun Cleric. This is a bit of a mind game as well. My opponent might think, oh, well, if she had a Flame Strike, she wouldn't need to damage my creature, so maybe she doesn't have Flame Strike, and maybe that will make my opponent overextend. Now, the disadvantage of this play, notice I did not play Flame Strike last turn, is that my opponent gets to hit me. Oh my god! That is serious. That is extremely serious. So this is a legendary card. The effect of this card is, whenever you cast a spell, put a Fireball spell into your hand. This absolutely needs to die Esperanto. I mean, there is no exception. This absolutely has to die right now. So, if I play Flame Strike, this will go down to 3 health. And unfortunately, I don't have any Frost Bolts here with which to kill it, so that's no good. If I play Blizzard, these two things will die. This will go down to 5 health, then Fireball will kill it. It's a bit sad that I'm using my spells and not drawing cards off of them with the Gadsden Auctioneer. Then again, I'm way ahead on cards, so I'm not that concerned. I could also throw away my Tiger after a Flame Strike and finish it off, but I think I'd actually rather use my spells than my Tiger, because creatures are precious. And I want to make sure that... For a moment I thought I couldn't target it. That would have been scary. My creatures are very precious, and so I don't want to throw it away if I don't have to. I want my opponent to have to spend cards killing my creatures. So the annoying thing about that guy is, with his 7 health, is I couldn't use Flame Strike, which is sad. This is a very expensive spell, so it'd be nice to use it if I could. This will die to a Flame Strike. Maybe if my opponent plays one more creature, I'll just Flame Strike it and whatever the heck this is. So my opponent played an Azure Drake. This gives +1 spell damage, and the battle cry is that you draw a card. This is a very good card, and it's actually kind of a counterpart against the Gadsden Auctioneer. So basically, the Gadsden Auctioneer is also a 5 mana 4/4. Notice they both have that in common. This gives spell damage on a card right away, whereas this guy potentially gives you more cards if you can get him in play longer. Okay, well, let's go ahead and think. So by leaving this on the board, I am putting myself in danger of a Flame Strike killing my Tiger, which is a bit sad. So I kind of want to kill it. If I play the Gadsden Auctioneer and Cone of Cold, I can get this down to 3 health and draw a card, but then I can't finish it off because I have these Pyroblasts. They're quite expensive. So what I think I actually have to do, sad as it is I need to play a Flame Strike here to kill my opponent's stuff. And we'll hang on to the Cone of Cold and the Mirror Image, because if my opponent has a turn where she doesn't really do much, let's say she has a turn where she just, like, you know, kills my creature and doesn't do anything else, because she's sitting on a bunch of, like, you know, global removal or control spells or whatever, then I can take the time to play Auctioneer, Coin, and Mirror Image and all that good stuff. Alright, this is a very good creature. It's a 4/3, it charges, and it has Divine Shield, so she's going to get to kill my Tiger here, unfortunately. Now, I need to do a little bit of thinking, actually, because I could try to win the game, essentially. I could play I have both my Pyroblast. I could fling one at my opponent's face. She'll go to 8 health. And then, you know, if my opponent doesn't heal or doesn't kill me, then she's going to be in a bit of a pickle. I think we'll go for the win here. Sad that I never got to use this guy, but this seems like a pretty good move. So what I'm going to do is this. And I'm going to play Mirror Image. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just making it a little bit harder for my opponent to kill me right now. She could kill me, by the way. If I hadn't played this, this attacks for 4, and then, like, she could be holding, like, you know... Actually, she's used both of her fireballs. It'd be actually very tricky for my opponent to win right now, even if I hadn't played those Mirror Images. Frostbolt. My opponent's throwing everything she can at my face, but my life total is just a little bit too high for her. Notice how she couldn't quite kill me. I'm at 10 health, so if my opponent has a Pyroblast, she will win next turn. But luckily, I have 2 Pyroblasts, that's why they're both in here, and we're going to get to win the game. Alright, so that was a little bit of a longer, more involved game. Control versus control. My opponent had more creatures, and I think that played into my favor because it gave my Flame Strikes and my Blizzards something to kill. One of the things I do need to consider, and by the way, if you're someone who has any feedback for my deck or cards you think I should put in or take out, let me know. One of the, really tough decisions is the Gadsden Auctioneer versus the Azure Drake. So they're both 5 mana, they both have 4/4. They both draw you cards, but the Gadsden Auctioneer draws you a card whenever you play a spell, so you can get more cards out of him, whereas the Azure Drake draws you a card right away, so you get some more of a fire and forget and get a bonus and move on with your life. You don't have to always be worrying about it like you do with the Gadsden Auctioneer. So it's hard to say. Hard to say which one's better. Maybe I will take the Azure Drake because I don't have any spell damage in this deck. I notice most mages I play against have some good spell damage going on, and I really don't. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to throw away our expensive stuff, and we're going to keep these 2 creatures. This is just really nice. It's just a really, really good 4-drop, and this is actually good as well against priests. Priests do a lot of health buffing and a lot of attack buffing and stuff like that. They have a creature whose like attack value is equal to its health and whatnot, so it's really nice actually to have a silence on hand, and since I only have 2 in my deck, I wanted to make sure I kept that around. Well, we got lucky here. We drew a Mana Worm in our opening hand, and Blizzard for some control. My opponent plays Shadow Word Pain, destroy a minion with 3 or less attack, which I'm okay with, because that's a 2-mana spell, and my opponent spent a, or excuse me, my Mana Worm was a 1-mana card, and my opponent just spent a 2-mana spell, which is okay. We're also going to play a coin, and then next turn I'm going to play a Water Elemental. Now, the Water Elementals do die to Shadow Word Pain, so I'm really excited, actually, that my opponent spent one of his Shadow Word Pains already, killing my humble Mana Worm. Now, I could have played the Sorcerer's Apprentice and held on to the coin, but there's no real reason to do that right now, so we'll just play our biggest creature. My creature kind of trumps my opponent's creature here. If he does not have a second Shadow Word Pain, it's actually a little bit tricky for my opponent to deal with the massive 6 health on this Water Elemental. Now, this creature has Taunt, so it has to be attacked, and Enrage, meaning if it gets damaged, it actually gets a bonus of 3 attacks. So you really need to kill it or don't touch it at all, because that's a pretty threatening creature. Alright, my opponent's thinking long and hard about what to do. He's at 4 mana. I was second, and I've already spent my coin. So no mana tricks are going to be up his sleeve. Let's see what he wants to do. Priests, again, have a very nice hero ability. It lets you restore 2 health to a character of your choosing. Usually yourself, but sometimes you'll target your opponents with it. And my opponent played a very good card here, the Akanai Soul Priest. So what this card does is it makes it so that any card that you play that would restore health deals damage instead. So like this hero ability can now be used to deal damage to my stuff. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not that excited about this, so I have to make a very difficult choice. One option is I could play the Spellbreaker and silence the ability. Unfortunately, this is a 3/5. It can actually kill my Spellbreaker, and then my opponent could heal it up afterwards, because its ability had been silenced. So that would be a little bit of a shame. Another option is just to, trudge along and play a Water Elemental here, proceed, as planned here, but then my opponent could actually, potentially start damaging my stuff, which would be really, really sad. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the Silence, because I have both of them. So, oh, I already attacked. Right, so I'll lose a little bit of value here as my opponent kills my creature, but I don't want this thing being able to deal 2 damage at will. When this deals 2 damage to whatever you want to, it's like a better version of my hero ability, so that's like the strongest ability in the game if you think about it. Now the good news is that if my opponent plays some more creatures and does not heal this, I'll be able to pick it off with my hero ability or maybe even my Blizzard. We'll see. Oh gosh, my opponent's playing a lot of really good creatures here. Power Word Shield, give a minion +2 health and draw a card. This is getting pretty dicey. Okay, well, let's think about what to do here. This is a quite good creature. I could, of course, ping off this Soul Priest, but then I only have 3 mana left over, which isn't enough to play another Water Elemental, and that's sad, because I really would like to play that one. I kind of wish I still had my coin. I could play a Blizzard, which would be my whole turn. It would finish this thing off, and it would take this down to 5 health, which would actually, still be a lot of health, unfortunately. Man, I'm in a bit of a pickle here. This could be the game that I lose. I could, of course, silence this, bring him back down to a 3/5, and taking away his taunt, which would allow my Water Elemental to finish off the Soul Priest. Maybe that's what we need to do. We'll do this, use my other silence. I could, of course, end up regretting that heavily, but that seems like it was the least bad of my options there. So now the Sen'jin Shieldmaster can finish off the Water Elemental, or the Spellbreaker, as it chooses. Very, very big body on this creature. The 2 3/5s that my opponent played were just incredibly good against what I happen to have on hand. And remember, when priests attack into your stuff, they can heal up afterwards, which can be a really, really big problem. Shadow Word. There's the other Shadow Word Pain, so my opponent's done with those. That's good to know. And now he's going to go ahead and kill my creature. Well, I can't really blame him for that. Okay, well, I could play this and then Blizzard, because it will be cheaper then. I could play my other Water Elemental and a Novice Engineer, or I could play my other Water Elemental and kill this thing. We're actually going to do this. We're going to play Water Elemental here. And we're going to ping this thing off. So now my opponent has a 3/3, which he can heal up to be a 3/5, but my 3/6 holds on against that, and my opponent doesn't have any more Shadow Word Pains. You can only have 2 of a particular card in your deck, and I know my opponent has used up both of those. The problem I'm running into is that priests have a spell called Mind Control, which costs 8 mana, and you just basically steal one of your opponent's creatures. Now, I don't have any particularly great creatures to steal, but since the game is kind of at a stalemate here, stealing anything is kind of a big deal, even if it does cost 8 mana. I really would like my opponent to play some small stuff that all dies to Blizzard, but looks like my opponent is not interested in obliging me. Looks like he wants to just exclusively play cards that have 5 toughness. It's like he built this deck on purpose to survive against Flame Strike. That's gonna be trouble for me. Trouble is a brewing, that's for sure. So now this thing's not holding up too good. Okay, what I'd like to do is play the Gadsden Auctioneer and then Cone of Cold, but that is a tragic 8 mana, so we can't do that. I think what we're going to do is we're going to play this and draw a card. See what we get. Flame Strike, that is potentially useful later. We're going to play the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And now with my mana, I could actually play Cone of Cold, and I will do so to stop my opponent's creatures from attacking me. So we're going to start to get damage on the face here. Now, this is where the deck is really starting to shine, because if my opponent kills my stuff, that'll be really sad. But if my opponent doesn't kill my stuff, if my opponent just plays his own stuff, which is, you know, what you're always praying your opponent will do when you're playing a control deck, if he just plays some creatures, I can play Blizzard and freeze everything again, and then I can play Flame Strike the turn after that and kill everything. Or potentially. I mean, my opponent's doing a pretty fantastic job healing his stuff here. He is... this is a very tough matchup for me, because my opponent has so much health that these Flame Strikes are not really as effective as they should be. Now, what I'd love to do here is play the Gadsden Auctioneer and Blizzard, but unfortunately, even with the discount from the Sorcerer's Apprentice, I don't have enough mana for that. I could play the Auctioneer and a Frostbolt, but that doesn't freeze enough of my opponent's stuff, and Flame Strike, which I can play, doesn't actually kill anything. It leaves 2 creatures alive. So we're going to do another Blizzard here, I think, just to freeze all of my opponent's stuff. And we're going to kill this creature, I think, while we have the chance, I guess. I could also use a Frostbolt, but nothing dies to it at the moment, so we'll just leave that alone. We'll save that for later and try to draw a card with it off of the Gadsden Auctioneer. And we're going to keep on swinging with our little Dinker Nuggets. So I've used a Blizzard and a Cone of Cold. I have 1 more of each in my deck. So now it's getting real. It's getting real here. I don't have any more freezing stuff left. And my opponent just played Holy Nova. It's a very good spell. So deal 2 damage to all enemies, restore to health to all friendly characters. So now all his stuff got healed. And it's all at massive amounts of health, and I can't freeze it anymore. Well, we're going to do what we can do here. First of all, we're going to draw a card, because you always want to draw cards first. Fireball, even Fireball doesn't do it. Man, I'm going to play this, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to freeze the stronger of my opponent's creatures here to stop it from attacking, and draw a card. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to swing. So we're trying to basically race my opponent out at this point, which is not exactly how this deck wants to operate. My opponent's going to steal the Mind Control himself, or use Mind Control to steal the Gadsden Auctioneer for himself. Luckily, that'll die to Flame Strike, at least. So that's some good news. And my opponent makes a very interesting choice. He chooses to heal the creature that is already above 4 health rather than the one that is at 4 health, which is perhaps a mistake, because you want to keep things above 4 health when you're up against a mage, because that's the magic number. That is the point at which things die to Flame Strike. Well, I'm not going to take my good fortune for granted. Let's play a Flame Strike here. Let's go ahead and Frostbolt this thing. It's interesting now. I could, if I wanted to, use the Novice Engineer to ping this off. And in fact, I will do that before my opponent can heal it again. So I've got a creature here and 2 cards behind it. My opponent has 3 cards in his hand. I have a life advantage, not quite enough to win with these cards. This is 16 damage. My opponent's at 19 health. And it's a bit of a problem here because, of course, you can heal every turn. This is a very, very good card. Whenever a minion is healed, draw a card. It is nuts. So that is, I'm afraid, going to need to die. So we're going to do this, and we're going to kill it. Well, hang on. I could try to go for a race here. Let's think. So basically, I have both my Pyroblasts now. I can deal 11 damage a turn with Pyroblast. 10 plus my hero ability is 11. So that will take my opponent down to 10 health, and I can get him then down to 7. With the hero ability, my opponent only gets up to 9. So actually, we're going to go for that, I think. I am going to go for it. I think if I were to try to just, play for control here and hit this Northshire Cleric with my Mana Worm, I think I would lose. Now, I made a small mistake. I actually attacked first, and then I played my Pyroblast. The Mana Worm gets +1 attack whenever you cast a spell, so I really should have played the Pyroblast first. Then my opponent would be at 6 health now, rather than at 7. And this is why Hearthstone is a deceptively complicated game. You can do things in any order that you want, and there's not really as much of that in Magic, which is why I think people who say this game is simple and never gonna get any traction because it's not deep enough are just wrong. Alright, well, my opponent seems not to have any more healing, so once again, our double Pyroblast is going to get the job done for us here. And we're going to give Righteous, the aptly named priest, a well played. He is polite, he'll give us a well played back, and that is going to be the game. Ah, just like that, we're up to 2-star master. So as you can see, you increase rank quite quickly in this game. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching that. That took about 30 minutes there, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and or subscribe. We've now made 2 videos with this deck, and in the next video, we will probably make a new deck and explore one of the other classes in this game just to see how they work. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed it once again. This has been Papa Boris, and I'm signing out. I'll see you next time.